Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the only global podcast purely dedicated to the aesthetic and superficial elements of cycling, where we look at kit, accessories, and the like. I am your regular host, Alex, joined by my regular co-hosts, Warren and Tony. And as always, the podcast is brought to you by Le Club. Host to the world's most exciting cycling brands, leclub.cc is your go-to destination for this season's premium cycling apparel. You can shop brands like MAP. In fact, they've got the whole new collection, the Service Course, Alba Optics, Fingers Crossed socks, as well as Quack shoes, luxury shoes from the United Kingdom with worldwide shipping. Demand more from your cycling experience. And if you go to leclub.cc right now, you will note that they have just relaunched their entire online experience, and the website looks pretty damn good. And guys, I heard some rumors that you have just come back from your first outdoors ride of the year.
You're right. The rumors were true. The rumors spreading were true. Warren and I met up with local Toronto legends and did some laps of the CNE. We had a kind of lucky sunny early evening with a little bit more warmth than we expected, and there was kind of a last minute about an hour in the exhibition grounds of Toronto. And I'll tell you, until you get out on the bike, it's hard to remember how much the trainer sucks, because you get outside and you just think this is what cycling's about. The trainer is just awful.
I'm still relatively far from being able to ride outside. There's still a lot of snow. There's a little bit of ice too. Not sure it's fully safe to be riding outside. Last weekend, I was actually in the country. There was a beautiful spring day where I think it got up to 10 degrees. But when the snow melts on those dirt roads, it just gets extremely muddy, and I don't know, it just didn't really feel like it. So I think I'm on the trainer for a couple more weeks, and then I'm going to get outside. Before we start the episode, I just want to say, I don't know about you guys, but personally, my mind hasn't exactly been on kit in the past few weeks with the launch of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I've been extremely focused on that. I've actually gone pretty deep in a rabbit hole of OSINT Twitter accounts, just looking at what's happening on the ground. It's a little bit unhealthy, actually, but I have to follow this stuff for my regular day job. But anyway, I've just been pretty focused on that, and it's pretty disturbing, the stuff that's happening. So I haven't really been focused on kid, but as always, we'll try to put together a good episode today. I don't think I looked at our stats before the recording today. I didn't see any listeners for Cycling Fashion Week from Ukraine, but in the event that we have any Instagram followers or perhaps listeners that we're not picking up through our stats, we just want to say that we're thinking about you guys, and we hope that everyone is okay over there.
Yeah, Warren and I grew up in Toronto's West End, which is actually Toronto's Ukrainian neighborhood, Bloor West Village. So we have a lot of friends we grew up with who were either first generation Canadians from Ukrainian parents or Ukrainian immigrants. This is where the Ukrainian festival is. A lot of Ukrainian bakeries and the banks and kind of the hub of Toronto's Ukrainian neighborhood. And it's upsetting to sort of hear what's going on. Knowing that there's a bit of a connection with the people in mine and Warren's sort of childhood neighborhood there. So I'm with you, Alex. We're thinking about those people, and yeah.
All right. That being said, we're going to do, as always, our segment where we look at news, new releases, or just generally speaking, industry news from the world of kit, bikes, accessories, anything that's tied to aesthetics and cycling. And we will actually start with a very interesting, I guess it's a re-release, not necessarily a brand new release, because it's an old brand that is coming back to life. That's right, folks. Le Monde bikes, they are back. So if you recall, Tour de France champion Greg LeMond, who I believe beat Laurent Fignon on the final time trial into Paris. By the way, this was absolutely crazy when you had a time trial to wrap up the tour. They would not do that today. Now guys are cycling into the Louvre by the pyramid, drinking champagne. They're absolutely not in time trial mode, but That's how Greg LeMond beat Laurent Fignon in 1989, I believe. So he's definitely one of the great cyclists of all time. He had his own bicycle brand for a long time. From my perspective, the old Le Mans bikes were iconic. I think they had incredible paint jobs. I was seeing them around quite a bit in my part of the world, and when I was younger, I perhaps even aspired to owning one at some point. But I believe that after a legal dispute with Trek, Tony's favorite brand, that the brand just disappeared overnight, that they basically took down the brand. I don't know if there was bankruptcy. I don't know the fine
Lance
details of the
crushed him.
story. But yeah, Lance Armstrong crushed them like Lance does. Um, but however, Le Monde is back. So they just announced this week that they are relaunching a brand. I believe it's actually called Team Le Monde, and they launched a bike model called the Le Monde 8 Concept. I'm going to describe the bike a little bit. So first of all, the logo of the brand, I think is pretty cool. It looks like it's straight out of the 1980s. It looks a little bit like the Calgary 1988 Olympic Games logo, if you know what I mean. It's got that vibe. Anyway, so that's the logo. But in terms of the bike that they launched, it's called the Le Monde 8. They call it a completely monocoque frame, full carbon. They actually pride themselves on having no metal parts in their integrated carbon handlebar and stem. They run the cables inside, obviously, internal cable routing. They've got this thing they call the matrix core blend, which is a sandwich construction method from the aerospace industry. So this is straight out of NASA or military technology, or they're really playing up the technology on the website. In terms of the paint jobs that they have, they're pretty, solid colors. They've got a royal blue one. They've got a sort of black and yellow kind of Boston Bruins theme paint job.
Live strong paint
or
job.
yeah, or alternatively Live Strong. And yeah, what else can I say about this bike? I mean, it's looking very sleek, very aerodynamic, very modern. There aren't any welds on there. You can't see anything that doesn't look sleek. There's no metal. And they're actually, it seems like they're a direct to consumer brand as well. So you can order your bike on the website. You pick up you put your size, your specs, and everything. Pricing for the complete build with Shimano Dura-Ace Di2, which I believe is the new 12-speed Shimano Dura-Ace Di2, comes in at 12,500 US dollars. You need to put up a deposit of 9,500. So you basically pay the whole thing up front. And then I think you pay the remainder upon shipping. It seems like there's a wait list as well. It also seems like the wheels are painted with the Le Monde logo. So I'm not sure if they actually manufacture the wheels themselves. I would guess not, probably, but they put their logo on it. And it seems like when you buy the bike, you become the member of an elite group of Le Mans owners, and they're organizing rides in the Alps in France. So overall, a pretty elite experience from Greg LeMond, who is back in the bike manufacturing industry. Guys, what does Cycling Fashion Week think about the new Le Mans?
I would be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that Greg LeMond got into like carbon composites. I don't know if it was after Lance crushed his original brand or whatever made Trek stop making them, but like if you go to lemondcarbon.com, that's same Greg LeMond, and he's like all into carbon. I think that's like his business, whatever. So I feel like the website doesn't really go into that much detail about whatever carbon layup they're doing. So I would imagine the wheels are their own wheels as well, so they have the name on there, but I think they're probably making the wheels. I just feel like if we don't mention that, we'll get a comment on Instagram from somebody who works in the carbon composite field or something.
The carbon industrial complex. Just one more thing I want to say, that they and I think it's important to mention that because they pride themselves on fully making those bicycles in the United States of America. It's made at the Le Monde R&D and manufacturing facility in Knoxville, Tennessee, and they are pushing the envelope of what is possible with carbon fiber. So Warren, you're absolutely right. They are the kings of carbon.
Yeah, I believe that's actually the Le Mans Carbon headquarters. And anyway, in terms of what I actually think of this bike, you guys said the Livestrong color scheme for that black yellow one. I actually saw that as like a kind of an ode to the yellow jersey, and I read it as like a fuck you to Lance personally. Subtle, but and maybe I'm just reading into that because I heard that the story of their rivalry so many times, but when I saw that color scheme, I immediately was like, oh, that's a fuck you to Lance. And then I'm not going to go into too much detail. I know you guys have some thoughts, but I think the mock-ups, which may or may not just be 3D renderings.
They are. So I want to mention quickly, just to interject, that Nerd Alert, our good friends over at Cycling Tips, the most recent Nerd Alert, they did a sort of deep dive into this bike. There's a lot of sort of crazy tech there, but they're at least saying they're doing. So we're not a tech show, so go listen to the Nerd Alert on it. But all these are just renders of the bike. They have no production yet. And so these are all renders. You could, once that, you can pretty kind of clearly see it on the photos. But I want to mention that. I'll let Warren finish his thoughts, and then I'll give my thoughts.
I don't want to preempt what I think I know Tony's going to say, but a few things. I'm just going to call out two little small design touches that I liked, and it's the paint inside the fork and inside the seat and chain stays, of just how they took the secondary color. So on the black and yellow, it's the yellow, and on the blue and white, it's the white. And just they've got the logo on the inside of the fork backed by the yellow, and then on the seat and chain stays, they've just the inner bit of that is the yellow there. Something about it's just really simple. I actually kind of like how, and they're, this isn't innovative. I'm not saying they're like the first ones to do it. It just stuck out to me when I looked at it, and I just thought it was kind of like a subtle design touch. I like how the logos on the inside of the fork versus like on the outside, even though you don't really see that much anymore. I kind of like that. I don't really like the logo, but those are just two little touches that I like.
So I think, first off, unfortunately, with carbon bikes, there's no real, like, I guess there's, they say there's little differences in aerodynamics, but all these bikes, it's the same. You take the logo off and tell me, you say, what is this frame, right? Like, you'd have to be a custom build. Like, I'd be like, I don't know, it's a Cervelo, it's a BMC, it's whatever. So they all look the same. But unfortunately, I got to completely disagree with Alex. The logo I hate. Like, it looks like when like Taco Bell does like a rebrand or something, when they're like, they've got their like original brand, and they've got some market thing that's like, we got to be hip and younger, and we can't have this kind of thing. And then they like try and do this really like simplified minimalist rebrand.
Team Le Mans powered by Taco Bell.
Yeah, so like the logo is terrible. Like, I wish they would have kept the old. I think they had kind of like a cursive script. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but like I hate this. Like, it feel that, so I kind of can't get beyond that. And then in terms of the rest of the bike, unfortunately, like, I want to be able to talk about new bikes that come out, new frame sets, but they're all the same. So like, unless we're sort of looking at stuff like standard and some of the aluminum and steel and titanium bikes, we know it's going to be drop stays, angular tubes for aerodynamics, proprietary seat post, integrated stem with handlebars,
internal cable routing.
Like,
you could do a bingo with all the features, and basically, yeah, you look at all these bikes and you get a bingo.
Which I, in a way, like, I'm not saying, like, I guess it's like good performance, but it's like iPhones have made phones just great. Like, you've got all this stuff, but like, remember how cool it was when like when you had like different phones, and someone was like, had like the new Razor or something,
Motorola.
And you're like, yeah, and you're just like, oh my god, that guy's got this. It's like you kind of wish there was like a bit more uniqueness in bikes, where so you see it and you're like, oh, you've got the new Le Mans, and it's like got a special sort of thing to it.
There is, if you get into some of the smaller frame builders, whether in North America or I don't want to pretend I know the small handmade builder market in Europe or any other part of the world, but like
Sarto.
Not even them, because I'm thinking of somebody like Adam Sklar, who makes Sklar bikes.
Even smaller, yeah.
Yeah, so really small, but like as a perfect example is like the top tubes on his bikes have a little curve on it. Like whether you like it or not, it's different. Like it stands out. So I agree with you, Tony. So many bikes and mass market bikes especially look exactly the same. So all I'm saying is I do think if we really wanted to do like a deep dive on unique frames out there, they're out there. There's just you just have to pay almost as much as you do for a Le Mans 8 to get one.
No, I mean, I think I know that they're out there, and I think that's why we all have. I mean, Marino is not necessarily a niche, but that's why we all have custom metal bikes, right? Because I think there was some of it was getting the geometry we wanted, which is easier to do on a metal bike, but also the look can be classic, but also sort of seem updated. Like there seems to be a bit more uniqueness to it. But anyways, like the Le Mans, the bike overall, it's so kind of like everything else that I sort of don't even want to have a take, but the logo's bad.
So I think it's a huge missed opportunity from Le Mans, and I don't know. That's my perspective. That's the way I see it. I think that my point of view on this is not the consensus point of view. I think the probably the average bicycle buyer out there is very enticed by the seemingly very strong technology that gets put into this frame. And I personally, I don't think I'm qualified to opine on this technology. So I'm just gonna go right past
So leave
that.
that to Nerd Alert, our friends at Cycling
I'll
Tips.
leave them to our good friends at Cycling Tips, Nerd Alert. Just go listen to their podcast. They'll do a deep dive on the technology. I have no qualifications whatsoever to opine on the technology. And between you and I, I'm not that interested in the technology. I don't know. Is it going to save me 5 watts or something? I don't know. I'm a 37-year-old dad. Like I don't race, so it's not really of interest to me. What's of interest to me is how this thing looks. And I look at this frame and it looks, I don't know, it looks like any Giant, it looks like any Specialized, it looks like any BMC, and that's a little bit unfortunate because if I look at some of the old Le Mans bikes before they were taken down by Lance, they were iconic. Look at the paint jobs of some of the old vintage Le Mans Tourmalet frame, which was made of Reynolds steel, or the Greg LeMond Ventoux frame, which had this beautiful paint job, tricolor, blue, yellow, and red, or the Zurich frame, which was the blue with the two white bands in the middle with the Le Mans logo. And actually, Tony, it wasn't a cursive logo; it was a all caps, typeface with serif, sort of like a Garamond or a Times New Roman almost. And it just said Le Mans on the tubes, and the tubes were thin, and it had a level top tube. I think they were super iconic, and I remember actually in the 1990s kind of dreaming of owning one at that time when I was starting cycling. So for me, I think there was an opportunity for Le Mans in maybe bringing back some of that vintage heritage that they had, or at least alluding to it, but they've gone in a completely different direction. They've gone straight to the future. They haven't even looked at the past, and they haven't really bridged between the past and the future. And I personally think it's a slightly missed opportunity. And actually, Tony, you are right. There was a period where the font on the tube had a little bit of cursive, but the older ones that I was talking about had this all caps sort of serif typeface.
I feel like maybe because carbon composites are Le Mans business, maybe it's all about the technology in this bike and the layup and it's super light and stuff. I almost wonder if making it look like all the other bikes was intentional, which is still a bad choice. I just thinking out loud, maybe that's why they did it. Is like, oh, these bikes sell.
Who's the buyer for this? Who do
Well,
you
so
guys think is the buyer for this?
apparently, if you listen to the Nerd Alert podcast, this is supposed to be, they've coined this as the safest bike ever made because they have all this uh, reinforcing technology behind the carbon with foam inserts and again tech stuff is not our
So if a
bag or
car
whatever.
crashes into you, you're safer.
I don't think that, but I think there's less chance of sort of I guess a snapping of a fork. I don't know. I don't know. So I wonder if it's that if that's what their sort of selling point is. If they're made in the USA. But I mean, at this point, I guess is if a bike's available, that's the customer, right? If you've got money to buy a bike, unfortunately none are available. So
And who is the buyer for this? Is it the 52-year-old corporate executive or lawyer? Is it the 25-year-old recreational racer with an FTP of 350? Like, what is it?
Unless the 25-year-old unless their parent is a dentist, I don't think they're going to be affording a 12,000 US bike.
Or maybe they made money on crypto.
That's true. Yeah, crypto investors and dentists are the market.
I don't know, Dennis. Will they ever give up a Cervelo for Le Mans?
A specific kind of dentist who like really clings on to Le Mans 3 tour titles as the only true American ones. American dentists.
Other question: is Cycling Fashion Week Team Le Mans or Team Lance?
Team Lance.
Ooh.
Lance, 7-time winner. Only 7-time winner.
That's a tough one. I'm not really sure I wanted.
I think I'm Team Lance.
Listen, it was a fair playing field because they were all doing it at the time. He wasn't in a way he wasn't cheating. He was just making it.
He was just better at it.
Like wasn't it someone with better cycling, sort of knowledge of history. But like I remember when he got his stuff stripped. The reason they vacated it was because they went back in the first like 80 riders that they had checked and either tested positive or admitted it. So it wasn't like they vacated those 7 tours because they couldn't give it to anyone.
Yeah.
Because they were like, well, everyone else also doped. So in a way, that was just like the time period when they were all doping, right? Like, it's not the same as baseball where you could say, oh, you're beating a record of someone who wasn't on steroids at the time. Like he was just beating other steroids people and doing it better than them. So it was a completely even and fair playing field.
I will say Lance is a piece of shit, but I think I'm Team Lance too.
Okay, moving on. Next release we're going to talk about. Specialized launched the S-Works Vent Evo hot weather gravel shoes. Now, you might think, okay, this is gravel. The guys are just going to dump on it. Hang on. They look really sleek. They are sleek looking, thin looking, aero looking gravel shoes. There's a double boa. There's the huge S-Works logo written diagonally on the shoes. And essentially I guess it is their flagship shoe range, the Vent Evo. It's got a super stiff carbon sole. So it is basically, they're saying, look, it's almost like an extremely stiff gravel or mountain bike shoe. So again, there's that gravel mountain bike crossover for hot weather, but there's slight weight savings, although it's not huge. But to me, the thing that's a little bit different between these shoes and other gravel shoes is that these are way sleeker. They could almost pass for road shoes. These shoes retail for 450 US dollars, 600 Australian dollars, 400 pounds, 430 euros. Guys, what do we think about the S-Works Vent Evo gravel shoes?
So to me, they nailed it. Like this is exactly what we have sort of been talking about, is bringing road, gravel as an extension of road style. Like I get it for gravel, like you just can't wear road shoes. Like it's just, you're going to have, just periods of dirt and where you got to walk. So you're going to need something that is sort of, geared towards the road, but you want to bring your sort of the kind of simplicity and the classic road style that we love if you're going to do gravel, as opposed to this whole kind of weird gravel stuff. So it's like the fact that they've done this shoe and it kind of just like, it looks like a road shoe. It's got the double bow. It's sleek. It's black, which is like the top, it's so acceptable to be black in gravel. And it's just kind of what needs to be done for gravel styling, right? Like we don't need cut off Birkenstocks and stuff. Like you need to bring in this is what I want to see in gravel. When I see a gravel release, I essentially want to say, well, that's just a road thing that they're, saying to gravel. I don't want to feel like I'm like a Portland hippie every time I see a new gravel thing.
I was going to say the same thing in that, yeah, they look like road shoes. And I like them. They're sleek. I picture these shoes as like they're bought by some like, I don't know, crit racer guy who's like super fast, has an FTP higher than Alex's, that, so like 400 watts or something. And, they kind of dominate some local crits and they decide to do some gravel racing. Maybe they buy like a Cervelo Aspero, so like a racing gravel bike. They get these shoes and then they do one gravel ride, realize how terrible it is, and then this shit is on your local like Facebook buy and sell group afterwards because they realize they hate gravel because
For
it's
$500 though,
yeah.
above retail, because that's what
Oh
people
yeah.
try to do all the
Oh
time.
yeah. No, they
Yeah.
definitely will ask for what they paid for it or more. But that's sort of so as much as I like the shoes, I'm kind of like, who's going to spend $500-600 on these, other than somebody like that who will just buy them and then. So I guess what I'm saying is look for them for resale on your local buy and sell group soon by a roadie who tried to do gravel this summer.
I think they look amazing. Personally, that my only question is apparently they're extremely vented. Like they are some of the most vented shoes. So obviously for hot weather, that's what they were made for. Problem is for someone who lives in my climate, I do most of my gravel riding in the fall when temperatures drop to 12 degrees Celsius, 5 degrees Celsius. And I just don't think it would work for me because I think my feet might get cold in that time. But one of the advantages of these shoes, apparently they dry really well. So if you're riding gravel and you go through like water or mud or whatever gets your feet wet, these would dry quite well also.
Tony's gonna hate that I say this, but they'd probably be good bike packing shoes because of the breathability and a
Yeah.
lot of people do bike packing in the summer and quick drying is key in bike packing because feet get wet because you're fucking trudging through a bog or whatever because the route you copied off of Ride with GPS is made by some old person who doesn't like cycling. And anyway, that's based off an experience Tony and I had last summer bike packing. So
Triathlon shoes are very well vented and dry very quickly. Maybe someone can jerry rig those to gravel for bike packing because bike packing is the equivalent to me of triathlon cycling shoes.
Okay, next thing we're going to talk about in the news, and this is actually more industry news than a specific release, but we were very interested to learn that apparel or kit brand Velocio was recently sold to SRAM, components maker, group set maker SRAM from the United States. So Velocio was launched in 2013, making technical apparel for cycling, kit, but also it seems like a very sort of engaged or very community focused, very I'm reluctant to say political because it's not necessarily political, but they're a brand with a conscience, if you will, Velocio. And they're a pretty well respected brand overall. I've never owned anything by them, but I think I'll pass it over to Warren because Warren has owned some of their pieces and still does actually. But basically, they were sold to SRAM, and what piqued our attention here is that it seems to be a trend of component makers or group set makers getting into the soft goods categories. So we talked about Envy recently launching kit. I forget which one it was last week, but Tony owns the entire collection of Campagnolo non-group set items that you can wear on your body. And so this is a brand that's taking another approach, which instead of making their own stuff with probably a third-party manufacturer, they're just going ahead and they're buying a brand, Velocio, to add it to their lineup, and that's SRAM buying them. So maybe turn it over to Warren so you can talk a little bit about Velocio and what's your experience with them.
yeah, I think I talked a bit about the winter jacket I have from them a number of episodes ago when we were talking about winter kit and that kind of thing. So I actually was just wearing that today when Tony and I mentioned how we were out riding, and I really like it. It is a nice winter jacket that isn't too bulky, looks pretty sleek. You can layer under it pretty well and don't overheat. I don't overheat when wearing it, which is like I've struggled a lot to find a winter jacket that was warm enough but also didn't make me overheat. So it's maybe not quite as warm as some of the like crazy fleece lined ones I've owned. But yeah, I like it. The cut is really good. The materials and construction all seem good. I'm pretty sold on the brand. I mean, Velocio's prices are quite high across the board, and I know they have like a whole lot of marketing copy on the website about why that is. It's material choice, ethically sourced, et cetera, recycled materials, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure if you know the brand, you're probably at least vaguely familiar with that, and that's all well and good. But I love spending money on kit as much as anyone, but like some of their things just get to the point where I'm just like, really? And I got the winter jacket on a bit of a deal, so I should qualify that. I would buy something else from them in the future. We have a friend who we're riding with today. He's got one of their jerseys, like just a short sleeve jersey that's pretty good, pretty nice looking. So yeah, I think overall I'm intrigued by their kit. I've heard people talk about their bib shorts as if they were like a biblical revelation or something. So I'm kind of curious to try a pair, but they're like $400. So I'm, Velocio, if you would like us to review it, I'm an excellent bib reviewer. You should send us a pair. I generally have a positive impression of the brand. Like you've got like Ted King as one of their many ambassadors, and I think I actually became aware of them through Ted King, like watching his videos a couple years ago. I think I watched his video on the Rift, and to be honest, that was the first time I've heard of the brand, even though I know they've been around.
You watch his Whoop video?
His Whoop video, no.
So I have heard about the bibs too, and I have to say they look amazing. However, the men's Luxe bib short sells on their website for $363 US. So we're talking, what are we talking here? 500 Canadian dollars for a pair of bibs. So but again, I have heard very good things about it. So maybe it's worth the money, but it is a little bit intimidating as much as we love spending money here on Cycling Fashion Week. But just back to the sale to SRAM though. How do you guys what do you guys think about that?
I assume that nothing will work on the kid anymore. I don't particularly find I'm not someone particularly interested in Velocio. Like I know like it's simple, but I've never seen it and thought, oh, I really want to spend the money. But I've heard good things, and now I guess you'll hear bad things.
I feel like if you went onto any news site that covered this and read like the comment section, or if you follow any cycling people on Twitter, there's several jokes made about how the zippers aren't going to work, or stuff will fall apart, or they'll introduce things you don't need as part of it. And I went on the Velocio Instagram post about it just to see if people being like, and there is a lot of like skepticism, kind of like, we'll see how this goes. And they keep reiterating nothing's going to change. But anytime a brand is purchased, they say that. So that's of course the line they're going to hold, and they're saying they're not moving. They're staying. They're not moving to the SRAM headquarters in I think Chicago. So they claim they'll be doing things the same way, and it's all about like distribution and blah blah blah. So personally, like the fact they're owned by SRAM immediately makes me less interested in them, just because of almost specifically Alex's experience with SRAM. I actually know people who have had positive experience with SRAM, though I think they run a one by with it. So SRAM just kind of sucks, no?
Let's hear what Bauke Mollema has to say about it. So, I mean, yeah, my experience with SRAM has been absolutely terrible. Unfortunately, my cyclocross bike that I use for gravel runs a 2x SRAM drivetrain, and it's just been a disaster. I've spent so much money on maintenance there. I've had to replace the front derailleur. It's just been awful. So whenever something is remotely associated with SRAM, I'm extremely skeptical here. But yeah, the brand Velocio looks great. One thing I noticed about them, Warren, you mentioned Ted King is an ambassador. They seem to have a disproportionate amount of ambassadors that are from the state of Vermont, which is my favorite state. And I spend part of my time pretty much on the border with Vermont, and I have extensive experience of riding in Vermont, which, state that I truly love. So I thought, if people from Vermont associate with that brand, it can be bad. I think their stuff looks really nice and it seems to be high quality, but the fact that it's associated with SRAM now, it makes me a little bit reluctant to pay the 500 Canadian dollars to sample a pair of their biblically epic bibs. Guys, question. Obviously, we've been very clear, Cycling Fashion Week, we are fully for sale. If SRAM came to us and said, we are going to buy the podcast, so it's going to be Cycling Fashion Week, it is going to be owned by SRAM, we are going to pay you guys, I don't know, $500,000 each for that, but you have to exclusively run SRAM on your bikes until the end of your cycling careers. Would you guys do it?
Considering the fact that I already messaged SRAM on Instagram saying, now that you've bought Velocio, you need to buy us. Yes.
Oh, we can't back out. No.
Yeah.
You should have told us about that, Warren.
I'm for sale. I don't know about you guys. I'm for sale. I don't care. Yeah,
I mean,
whatever.
I've heard good things. Like they're getting away from. They're not going to make any mechanical stuff soon anyway. So, I'm sure their electronic group sets will be fine. They can probably solve a lot of the whatever problems they had, and so yeah, I take it.
I think I'm a no on that. I've already suffered enough with SRAM that I don't know, $500,000 anyway. What do you even do with that in 2022? You can't even buy a house. There's been so much inflation. I don't know.
Is that the asking price for the podcast?
Well, I don't know if there is an asking price, but make us some offers. The brands out there, Shimano. I think we're more Shimano people than SRAM people. We're definitely more Campagnolo people.
Yeah,
Make us offers. We're all
but we don't
ears.
need the group set. We just need T-shirts and bags.
Okay, next segment, the Panache Police, where we discuss and debate the important topics in cycling aesthetics. This week, I think we have a seasonally appropriate topic to discuss. So it's mid-March as you are listening to this podcast. The weather is starting to get a little nicer. The spring classics are underway. We're getting ready to ride outside. And we've been probably hibernating, at least in the northern hemisphere, for the past 4 or 5 months. And our legs are probably a little bit hairy. We've been slacking on the leg hair care department, and we haven't really shaved. And so today we're going to discuss the best ways to shave your legs. Should you do it, first of all, because there's some people who are reluctant to do it. Should you do it? At what time of the year should you start shaving your legs? And what's the best method to do it? So I will turn it over to my esteemed co-hosts to begin the discussion on that.
I mean, I think you have to do it. Like, there's no and ifs or buts about it. It's the science behind whether it does anything with watts, or I've heard some stuff that sort of the original reason from it was about cuts and sort of road rash, that if you didn't have the hair pulling as you were trying to kind of clean yourself up. But it's more of a marker that you're a cyclist. I mean, it's now more important than ever. We're happy more people have gotten into cycling, but we still want an air of superiority. And so if you shave your legs, it's a kind of a marker, like, okay, like, yeah, you've gotten your road bike recently, like you bought you bought some pad or mal kit, but like you're still not there yet until you shave your legs. So it's very important from an aesthetic point of view and from a sort of arrogance point of view to make sure that you got some freshly shaved pins. Secondly, I think I don't usually shave until I'm coming into knee warmer weather, when I can see a little bit more. Like I today we're out on the bike, and you got the bib tights on, and I don't think I would, even though I'm outside, I don't think I would shave personally. I don't know what time of year you guys start, but for me, usually once I kind of feel I'm wearing knee warmers or shorts.
Well, I don't wear knee warmers, but yeah, generally, anytime I think I'm gonna have shorts on more than once a week, which I don't know, I feel like you go pretty quickly from tights or leg warmers to shorts. Like, it kind of just happens and you just start doing it. That's definitely when I start shaving, and I probably shave later into the year just because I get in the habit. It feels kind of nice. I definitely, towards the end of the year, I'm still shaving even when I start wearing leg warmers or tights again. I definitely, as soon as my bare legs are out there, I definitely start noticing the fact that my legs aren't shaved if I don't shave. So yeah, I like to start doing it. Just kind of like rip the band-aid off, just do it, get that first one in, because then you do that first time after you've got your kind of winter hibernation growth, get rid of that, and then it's easier to maintain throughout the year.
It's true. The first go is tough, right? Because you've got a lot to take off. And so you've got to go in with the clippers first before you can get into the actual like razor. So you're kind of taking this, you're creating a lot of mess there. And then once you get going, you can kind of just like build consistency. It's a little bit easier. Now, what method? Now I shave. I usually go, if I'm starting long, I got a pair of kind of like clippers, clip them off, and then I get out the Mach 3 and some Aveeno. I usually run a nice hot bath, candle, maybe some Thelonious Monk or whatever. Little champagne,
Me time for Tony.
Little me time, kick the leg up, get it nice and smooth. But I know there's a lot of other ways that people, we talk about leg shaving, but really we're talking about hair removal, leg hair removal, because you can wax, you can nair.
Tony, let me interrupt you because I wanted to ask about this. And first of all, I have a confession to make here. I've been a cyclist since my late teens. I'm my late 30s right now, and I don't shave my legs. Now, what am I doing? What am I doing
I didn't
hosting a
know
podcast?
that, Alex.
Well,
I
so
didn't
I'm
either.
glad you didn't know, and here's why you didn't know. There are two reasons why I don't shave my legs. The first one is because my wife has scared me about some risks of shaving my legs. And she has said, Alex, if you shave your legs, you will have leg hair growth that will be as what's the English word, as that will look like beard stubble. Basically, the way it will regrow, it won't be soft, it'll be hard, and that's going to be terrible. So my wife has scared me into not shaving my legs by telling me that, which may be fake news. You guys can tell me, but that's the first thing. The second thing, and that's tied to what you said, Tony, that you didn't know that I don't shave my legs. And that's because I have distinctively non hairy legs. If you look at my calves when I'm wearing bibs, if you look at me from more than like 2 meters away, you couldn't tell that I don't shave my legs because I barely have any visible hair. And the hair that I have is like blonde or invisible to the naked eye. So I can get away without shaving, and people would say, "Oh, well, it seems like this guy shaves his legs." Now, I would like to maybe try hair removal this year, the little hair that I have on my legs, and I was thinking in order to deal with the things that my wife has told me, which is that if you shave your legs, you will have beard stubble on your legs. I thought, well, what about waxing? Wouldn't the regrowth be kind of smoother and nicer after?
I've tried waxing the legs a couple of years ago. First of all, it's painful. And I found I ended up having to go back over with a razor afterwards because there was a couple like stray hairs here and there that didn't quite, and maybe that was the fault of I had somebody else do it. I didn't do it myself, like a friend.
So you got to go pro though, right? Like that's the thing. That's why I don't wax. Like I'm not afraid of the pain. I don't think it's. I think that's a bit overblown, but I don't want to pay the money for it. But I feel like if you do it at home or with a friend, I mean, maybe the friend could be really good. I just feel like you're not going to get the results from these at-home kits. Like if you're going to wax them, then you've got to maybe put that investment in. Again, maybe you have someone who's either an esthetician or has like a more kind of high quality than like the sort of like at-home kit you buy from the drugstore. But I do feel that a professional needs to be involved in waxing your legs
Because shaving, you need to do it every other day or every third day, whereas
every couple days. Yeah.
waxing should last you considerably longer time.
So I mean, you're right about so the way this is the old sort of wives' tale about you if you shave it'll grow back thicker. It doesn't grow back thicker. It's that you're cutting when you shave, you're cutting off the hair in this sort of cross section, and so it appears like you said coarser and harsher, right? Because of where you're cutting it. So you actually are sort of correct that in a period of time, you'll have a bit of this kind of stubble that comes that's a bit rough. I mean, maybe your wife doesn't shave her legs, but I'm sort of surprised you haven't experienced that with a female who maybe have gone a few days without shaving their legs or a week or something and stuff. It lasts for such a short period of time before your hair is just like back to leg hair. Or you shave again once you realize you've grown a little stubble, that is a non-issue. You shouldn't be worrying about that. But yeah, I would be into waxing if I had I guess extra money because I just feel like I respect the esthetician, the profession of an esthetician and a waxer.
Maybe we can do a live test on the podcast where Warren waxes Tony's legs, and we just kind of report on it on the podcast.
It's definitely painful. Tony's saying he doesn't buy it. We should maybe just do it for that reason to see get his reaction on tape.
I mean, I've waxed other things on my body, so I know what it feels like. It's not that bad.
Oh yeah, okay. We won't go into what you've waxed. I was gonna. One thing I'd recommend, and I've seen a lot of cyclists mention this, and I use it, is a Phillips One Blade as your sort of like electric razor. I use that to like do the initial pass for hair. I find it to be pretty good. and then take like a Mach 3 to it, or just wanted to give a shout out to the Phillips One Blade.
So you guys start shaving at about this time of year, mid-March, and then
No,
no,
Like in a month.
in a month.
for me, it's like, yeah, when I think I'll be, I don't know, because I think it'll be interesting. I remember early on, I had some really cheap bibs that the hair actually, or sorry, leg warmers that the hair sort of like kind of almost like sprouted through. They were thin, and so I think maybe I shaved a bit earlier. But yeah, usually kind of like, I'm gonna admit something here that is very hard for me as a
You've
person. Like,
already admitted more than I thought you would, Tony.
yeah, but I don't have great calf genetics. Like, it's just unfortunate. My uncle, he didn't make the NHL, and they say it's because his calves were a little bit too small. I do everything I can to kind of accentuate the calves, make them look as big and sort of defined as possible. And I noticed the first time years and years ago when I shaved, my calves just look so much better. So really, I'm doing it for the calves. And I find like they got to kind of be out of the bibs, the tights and the leg warmers anyways to really notice it. So it's once I think people are seeing my calves, then I got to make sure I'm shaved so that the calves look as good as possible.
See, Tony, I'm kind of the other way around. I have incredible calf genetics, not to brag. However, my quad genetics aren't great. Like my quads aren't especially impressive, but when people look at my calves, they go, "Oh wow, that's a nice calf." Okay, into the canal, our next segment where we throw something we don't like from the world of cycling or cycling style into Montreal's Lachine Canal. Last week, our New York City guests said that they were throwing stuff in the East River, so that's the New York City version, but we're going to stick to the Lachine Canal for our segment. Why don't we start with Tony actually this week?
All right, so I'm going for a very big and bold statement, but I am throwing bike computers into the canal. I have decided that this year I think I'm going to do a no bike computers year. I'm not gonna. I haven't debated whether I want to keep the mount on the out front mount on so people know I do own a bike computer. But I think I've decided that I'm just going to go no stats, no Strava, just ride on feel, ride with people. I don't know what I'll do about maps. I don't know if that breaks the rules. If I could use it for maps sometimes. But other than that, I think I'm throwing bike computers in. I've been on a kick of sort of throwing screens and data and all this info in, moving to sort of a Luddite version of myself. And so bike computers, it's Tony. I'm going on record for a no bike computer year this year. I'm not using a bike computer.
As somebody who rides with you a lot, I really look forward to you constantly asking me what the fucking route is.
I want to say something. You were so like Captain Ahab on this about like, I don't know why I referenced that, but like, even if I have the route, you're like, turn here, turn here, turn here. And you're like, yeah, I know, I got it here. You're like, okay, next left. And you're like, yeah. So I don't need the route anyways. It doesn't matter whether I have it.
I will say the primary reason I have a cycling computer is for the map capability. And I don't want people to think like Toronto's like super hard to navigate or something. It's not. It's just like to try a lot of different new routes, copy routes from other people that maybe haven't ridden before. I think Tony's exaggerating a bit how much I call out turning a bit, and I don't know what that has to do with Moby Dick.
I feel like he was a good at directions, Captain Ahab. He was trying to find Moby Dick everywhere.
I don't know. There's something about whale bones and shit.
This is now a Moby Dick podcast.
I encourage you to make this change. I just think it's gonna be bad for me.
Tony, are you ditching Strava? Because if you're gonna ditch the bike computer, you kind of have to ditch Strava.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess theoretically, like you could put Strava
on your phone. Ew.
On your phone and like in your pocket, you're not looking at it, but it still like defeats the purpose. Like I just kind of like, I'm trying to get away from like the oversharing, the over sort of like consumption of technology. Like I want to kind of just like get back to just enjoying something for the sake of it without having to like prove that I did it. Like just go and ride your bike, enjoy riding your bike, stop worrying about whether other people like it or think you did it or know about your ride or whatever. So yeah, I guess I'm that no Strava, no bike computer, which warrants my maps. I has to go every ride where we're going.
No, I'm on board, Tony. The no bike computer and no Strava. That's definitely music to my ears. Although I do think I want to keep a bike computer for maps or just I don't know.
Yeah, but you don't have your own warrant.
I've always had a bike computer, but the no Strava. I think I'm fully on board with that. Strava or it didn't happen is in the canal, and that's the new trend for 2022. I've just declared it. Okay, I'm gonna do my canal this week. So I am gonna throw in the Canal Euro style chamois, or I guess you say chamois in English, chamois cream. So Euro style chamois cream is in the Canal. This is a little bit off brand for us here at Cycling Fashion Week because we are lovers of all things Euro in general. So you may wonder, first of all, what is Euro style chamois cream? And second of all, how can something Euro be in the Canal? Well, both great questions. I'm going to address them one by one. Euro style chamois cream. So if you buy chamois cream made by the great brand, I think they're called Chamois Butter or Butter. Great products, fantastic. I've used their chamois cream for years. Great way to avoid getting saddle sores if you are prone to getting saddle sores. It's a fantastic product. They make a version of the chamois butter that is called Euro style chamois cream. And at some point, I was out of chamois butter and I just went online, just ordered a couple of tubes of chamois cream by that brand, chamois butter. And I didn't really pay attention, and I saw it said Euro style, and I didn't even read the description. I saw it's Euro, it's got to be good. So I just put it in my cart. So a couple days later, it ships, and I'm like, great, this is my Euro style chamois cream. Go on a ride. So just before going on a ride, I do my thing. I put the chamois butter where it's supposed to go, and then I get on the bike, start riding. And then 2 minutes into my ride, I'm starting to have this little kind of cool, minty butt tingle as I'm riding. And it's extremely unpleasant. And it almost feels like, like if you've been sitting somewhere for too long and then your muscles kind of go to sleep or you get a little bit tingly. That is exactly what happens. So, what is Eurostyle chamois butter? Basically, it's the regular chamois butter, but in which they've put a little bit of, I don't know, cool like peppermint that sort of numbs certain parts of your posterior where you've put the chamois butter. Extremely unpleasant. Don't like it. That is in the Canal. However, love the regular products from that brand, but the Eurostyle one I think is extremely in the Canal.
For a second, I thought you were going to tell us that you accidentally put Embro cream on, which is what it's used in cyclocross to like get the legs warmed up. You would not want to apply it to your chamois. That would not be good. I don't know what you described sounds terrible. I don't want that.
I've actually never heard of this, and that seems like an awful idea that you would want any type of anything you're going to rub down there. You want to be non sort of reactive.
So it has menthol and witch hazel, and it's supposed to produce a cooling and soothing effect. But in my case, it's more of a tingling effect and a numbing effect, which I think I was actually quite worrying the moment that I applied it and started to feel it. So
So did you literally throw the tube into the
no,
canal on your
I did
way
not.
home?
I did not literally do that. In fact, I still have the tube. I just haven't touched it in a long time. But yeah,
Maybe we should make Canal chamois cream once we expand our product offering.
Once
this
SRAM
idea.
buys
Once
us.
SRAM
Yeah,
buys us, we get capital to come up with new business ideas. Yeah. All right, Warren, what do you got in the Canal?
I am going to throw into the Canal something that I feel like any cyclist who's been cycling for a while has probably participated in events or races or more like fondos I feel like all gravel events, whether they're races or more casual things like Grinduro, have this. And what they do is they give you event swag. So you get it because you're charged some registration fee that probably helps produce the stuff. But it's usually things like it might be a musette bag, which is actually kind of useful, but it's generally more like pint glasses, t-shirts, crappy poorly made baseball caps, maybe trucker hats. I think I've gotten a coaster. I don't know. It's generally the same thing, and usually the t-shirt is not the size that you would wear. The pint glasses are often plastic, and they crack. I'm throwing all that crap in the canal because I find that it's all poorly made and I end up giving it away. If it's clothes, I give it away to like some kind of clothing donation, which I guess isn't necessarily a bad thing, but why'd you make it in the first place? And then the like pint glasses and that kind of thing just end up breaking. And so they end up in the garbage. This is a consumerist sport. Like we don't need more crap because we're already buying enough stuff.
This one I'm big on. I don't know why one of us didn't think this earlier. I guess because less events were happening, but like, yeah, like I get this stuff. I haven't done as many fondos and gravel rides as you have, but you get this stuff, and I don't want it. And I seem to never be able to opt out from it. There's no sort of option like, don't give it to me. it's always like garbage. It's not something I would ever wear or use. I get it immediately, and it's brand new. It's crap anyway, so and then you're right, you give it away. You try not to get it. I think that to me, I feel like stop making this stuff altogether and don't give any of it at these events. People will probably still show up. They're not doing these events for a free T-shirt. If you do really feel you want some branding to kind of be out there in the world, I think Warren's right. Like, do some cycling related branding, maybe water bottles, musette bags, something that like you would use as a cyclist.
But even the water bottles look terrible usually.
Okay, even the water bottles do it, but I'm saying I'm one of the hosts of a cycling fashion podcast. My fashion enjoyment extends to my off-bike clothing as well. So I am not wearing your long sleeve tee with your nephew's first graphic design effort on it. Like it's just you get it, and every time I set up, there's nothing that is even like a box I can check that says like, please no paraphernalia, no swag, whatever for me. Because I would do that. Like, okay, you are producing for other people like it. You see a lot of dads wearing, fun run T-shirts they got from 12 years ago. I'm not going to be that person.
Don't talk shit about dads.
It's not about dads. It's about poorly dressed dads. Like, at least give me the option not to take it.
You're just putting product into the world for nothing. That's just probably going to end up in landfill at some point. Because I agree with you. I hardly, like, I never see people on the road where their Grand Fondo swag because it always looks terrible. You never really ask for it. So a couple of things, just lower the registration fees because presumably that costs them something to produce that. So just lower the registration fees or take the money and invest it in your food and drink beverage or your food and drink budget for after the ride or something, which people actually usually enjoy after they've just finished a 120-kilometer ride.
I will say I did Grindero 2019 and I got a musette from them and 2 water bottles, and the water bottles were fabric water bottles. They were actually how I discovered the model of fabric bottles that I like a lot. But like a musette, I feel like I've trashed musettes before. I don't actually think they're very practical if you're not a pro cyclist grabbing a musette from the team car. Yeah, but a Grindero one doesn't look pro because it's got like kooky
Warren, I was
colors
just
and
going to
stuff.
say, actually, Grindero seems like they have some of the least bad swag out there.
Yeah. No, they do. It was pretty good, and but I did still get plastic pint glass as part of the swag as well. But the musette and bottles, I was just saying, like that at least is like useful. I've used the musette a bunch of times, used the bottles plenty. So yeah, maybe only stick to like good cycling water bottles and a musette, really practical things. But like I never wear the Grindero T-shirt.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I just don't think there's a need to put product out into the world. And also, I mean, we're a cycling fashion podcast, and you could probably accuse us of promoting overconsumption and just creating products that are not ultimately needed. And, that would probably be accurate to some extent, which is why I think we probably don't need to have this extra product out there that no one is enjoying and no one is going to wear. Okay, it's the return of We Rate Your Bike for Free, where listeners send us pictures of their bikes. You can send it to us by DM on Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week. You can send it to us by email, cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. Give us a few details about the bike. What's the story behind the bike? What are the specs? Send us a couple of pictures and we will rate it and give you ways in which we think you can improve the bicycle here on the podcast on Cycling Fashion Week. So this week, I think we have a really interesting submission, a little bit outside of our comfort zone, aesthetically, but also geographically. So this seems to be a listener from Australia. His name is Carlos. And actually, he sent us a lot of pictures of him and his crew in kit as well as the bike. And I think it's important to mention that because it is part of an overall aesthetic that Carlos is representing here. And I think from my perspective, he's doing very well. He's doing a lot of things right here. So I will describe that. So Carlos, as I mentioned, is from Australia. He sends us some pictures of him and his crew with whom he rides. And actually, the people there are wearing something that we talked about on the last episode, which is the Attacker Artist series. So Attacker, Attaqué, depending on whether pronouncing it in French or in English or from Australia. So I'm sure it's Attacker. But they launched what we discussed recently, the Artist series, which is a slightly more artsy kit. It's got some drawings on it, some goblins, some monsters. So anyway, him and his crew are wearing attacker kits. So it's all very nice, and he seems to have an interesting crew of many people of different ages, but they're all wearing extremely cool kits, white shoes, white socks. They're doing this very well. And then Carlos includes a picture of his bike, which is a Parlee RZ7. So Parlee, smaller brand from, I believe they're from Boston, Massachusetts. He's got a graphite gray or almost charcoal gray, glossy aerodynamic bike frame from Parlee. The Parlee brand is written very small on the diagonal tube in red. He's got one of these integrated stems that I believe Parlee is putting on their bikes now. He's got extremely aerodynamic seat post. The wheels on this bike seem like they are 35 millimeter deep Schmolke carbon rims, which are also glossy, which I can't tell. The picture's a little bit small. I can't tell if they have the carbon weave, but they're also kind of dark gray, glossy, extremely clean wheels that he's got there. So Parlee RZ7. I can't quite see what the group set is because, again, the picture is a little bit small, but it's an extremely sleek bike from Carlos. Very aggressive looking kind of race bike as well. It seems like a very fast bike. So overall, guys, what do we think about Carlos's Parlee RZ7?
I wanted to start by thanking him for, I feel like he set the bike up specifically to take this photo to send us because the it's drive side out and the crank arm as it like is perfectly horizontal. He's got it in the hardest gear, which I feel like is just the ideal positioning for bike photos. The bike itself, we talk about SRAM stems all the time, so I would have to just knock the number of spacers he's got on his handlebar. It looks like quite a comfortable riding position. So I would consider just, getting that fully slammed, fuck your back up, doesn't matter. And then the bike itself, I think overall looks pretty clean. I haven't seen too many Parleys in real life, if any. I'm not, or no, I've seen a few at Blacksmith in Toronto. I don't know. I think the color is pretty subtle, but it like the gray makes it a little different. And he's got everything else is kind of just all blacked out, so it's a fairly solid bike.
For me, I think it goes back to what we were talking about a little earlier, where like there's not too much nuances to these sort of modern carbon bikes. Although I think Parley does a good job. I think there's some. It does kind of look unique in its own, but I just absolutely hate these arrow stem handlebar combo things. Like the if you have a stack, it looks worse than having a regular stack. And then just the stem itself is so bulky and heavy that it takes away so much. Like I think this is obviously an aero bike, and it looks like it's got some sort of bigger tubing, but it just like my eye just draws to this like heavy stem that's on there, and I just hate it. And it's not really Carlos or any owner of these bikes' fault, because I guess there's a practicality that's what's being sold, but everything else about this bike I sort of like, even the SRAM, because I think it's
So it is SRAM, huh?
it's Axis or ETAP, so
it's still gonna break down though. They're gonna find a way to.
Fair enough, but I just unfortunately I gotta rate it kind of like a 7 or 7.5, and it's just because of that stem. I just can't stand these aero stems. They're so bulky, they're so big. Like when the Venge came out, I just like I couldn't look at that bike. Like it seems like it's disappeared from. I guess it was one of the sort of first aero, popular aero bikes or whatever. I obviously no one with it, but it was just so the stem and the stack and everything was just so bulky, just took away from the rest of the bike.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Carlos's bike, like we've established that I am not an aero carbon frame kind of guy. Like I'm a little bit more traditional and vintage in the types of bikes that I like, but I think he's made some nice color choices there. I find that kind of graphite gray with the slight touches of red looks very good. One thing I'm going to give him massive points for is the wheels. I think he's got some very interesting looking German carbon wheels there. They're made by Schmolke, which apparently is a maker called Stefan Schmolke from Konstanz, Germany, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Konstanz is on the lake on the other side of Switzerland near Friedrichshafen, so pretty nice part of the world. Anyway, the wheels look incredible. They're kind of glossy wheels. It says Schmolke Carbon, small brand. Most people have probably never heard about it. Connoisseur type shit. You show up at the ride with this, people are going to ask you questions. It just looks incredible. So I love the wheels. I also like that Parlee is a smaller brand. I mean, it's not a tiny brand either. Warren, you said you almost never see Parleys here in Quebec, like around Quebec City. It seems like there's a bit of a cluster of Parlee riders. I'm not sure why that is. I think Velocio carries them, or perhaps was carrying them, and so it kind of spawned a community of Parlee riders. So you do see some people having Parlee, but it's not specialized, or it's not Trek. So I like that he went for a smaller brand like this. But for me, and we'll definitely post some photos of the kits as well that Carlos and his crew are wearing. But where he gets the most points, this obviously isn't rate my kit, it's rate my bike. But look, we're about kit here on Cycling Fashion Week, and he went out of his way to show us pics of him and his friends. I mean, they've got incredible style. Tony, you're part Australian. Like, are people in Australia like super stylish when it comes to cycling style, or what's the deal there?
I mean, to be honest, they were first style in general, no, because they're the inventors of Blundstones. But Tilly
Also,
hats.
Tony, did I just dox you as part Australian
You
on
just
the
dox
podcast?
me. You just dox me. That's why Australia comes up a lot in my talk. Is for everyone out there, my dad was born and raised in Australia.
Tony's a self-hating half Australian.
Yeah, and so, but actually, as far as cycling step, they were the first ones I noticed when I was over visiting some family and friends and riding a few years ago. They were, I think I mentioned this about MAP last time. They were the first place I noticed where people were really uh, getting away from kind of club kits, pro team kits, and there was, MAP was starting out and stuff, and I mean, RAF had been around for a few years, but that still was relatively niche for people actually kind of wear. Like people were still sort of into that, so. I'll give a lot of shout outs to Australian cycling fashion. Regular fashion, no, it's cut off dungarees, Blundstones, and Tilly hats. But cycling fashion, Australia's got it down for sure. I've only really ridden in Melbourne, so I don't know what Sydney and Brizzy does. But
Shout out to all our mates in Straya, in Melbourne. Anyway, Carlos, I'm giving you a solid. I think if I were rating just the bike, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. But because the kit is so well done, I got to boost that to a 9 out of 10 for Carlos. So we're going to put the pics on our Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week. Make sure you follow us there, and please send us your bikes and actually your kits while you're at it as well to rate on We Rate Your Bike for free. Again, Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week or cyclingfashionweek at gmail.com. That's it for this week. Another episode of Cycling Fashion Week. Thank you very much to Tony and Warren, my co-hosts. And thank you to our sponsor, Le Club, which is the host to the world's most exciting cycling brands. Go to leclub.cc. It is your go-to destination for this season's premium cycling apparel. You can shop some of your favorite brands like MAP, Alba Optics, the Service Course, Quack Shoes, Fingers Crossed Socks. They've got it all. They've got more brands launching later this year. They've got a brand new website, brand new online experience. Demand more from your cycling experience. Not to mention that they have the best coffee in the business as well, which they can ship to your door. Go to leclub.cc. Thank you very much to our listeners. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week. Please subscribe to the podcast. We will be back in a couple of weeks with another episode of Cycling Fashion Week. Until then, take care.